So when our plane tickets come, do they come in the mail or are they electronic or?
Well, you don't have an actual ticket, but they're electronic, so, I mean, you're in the system. Basically, if you get there and you show your passport, you're on, but we'll have actual tickets. And,
Don't you get them?
I think for those of us that are leaving from Reading, I'll have your tickets.
Oh, okay.
So we have a couple of people that are flying straight from San Francisco, they'll have their tickets mailed to them.
I'm actually relieved ours aren't being mailed to us.
Okay.
Mail gets stolen now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've done pretty much done everything through base billing now and. Yeah, how you doing?
You know, we've never had any problems with mail being stolen, but we've got one of those, boxes down the corner of the street where they're all boxed together.
Yeah.
I just,
I'll take a spot for it.
day before yesterday, I went down there and the mail hadn't gotten back last. I opened up the mail, I didn't see daylight over there.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wait.
I got back over the mail, called the post office.
We got 4 minutes, go for a run.
Yeah.
You don't know you're missing something until Friday.
Well, yeah, you might never.
Oh, it was fun when we went by the church by my neighbor. But, we had roundup and then my last name is Meyer. And the same people had Brandon Street. And they had the same number.
Wednesday.
And their last name was Meyer. Always got their mail, they always got ours. We worked on holiday market together. Oh, so we like, here's your market. Here's the small and long.
Years ago when I was a baby, is there a big number?
Supposed to be on.
So now they're gonna go there, L and Bertha D. Parsons. They had the same name. I prefer the lighter color.
It was okay.
And it always nice and all smell good, but I like the lighter. Okay.
I'm ready.
I like the one.
That's my several times.
Okay.
Thank you.
Divorced Deborah Wright. Such a, nope.
So
They
far,
even
so
showed
good.
us the art of your haircut.
Yeah.
I did. Nice.
I did all a year ago.
I do appreciate
Even
that.
though it took me about 3 days to come to my house.
I don't know what to do.
You're an old man.
Us three.
This was fun.
Yeah.
You did.
Did you really stay up all night?
Yeah, well,
It's 530. Oh, 530.
it was not off.
Yeah,
Stick it in.
yeah.
So, it was interesting.
I wasn't too far.
By the end of the night, man, we're gonna get out of here.
No, unfortunately, I married into this catastrophe. I'm not part of it.
That's a true one. That's about mine.
All the stuff that you
But I didn't know I was
on the
gonna.
internet does okay.
I had
When I try to get on my Gmail.
I still like it when somebody would type it. Who's your dad? Always you. Oh, Al's you.
We go up and down all the time. Around the very edge of the west left. And so it's going in there and probably that's like,
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are.
I mean, my thing is.
Yeah.
But.
What is it?
Yes, both of them.
It seems like
Great.
Colleen Myers is.
Actually, all those come from,
No?
come out of the same nexus.
I really don't know.
And there shouldn't be any
Whoever
difference.
came up with that idea.
Yeah.
I think my husband.
Thankfully, Doreen-
That's how it's used.
Thankfully, Doreen's on the more work and stuff like that.
And just like it, I can manage different permissions
Was
of.
not for me.
Permissions from the yeah.
Is Jeannie getting involved in that?
Choke
No.
it down.
Go to.
Strength is bad. I think.
I remember
There shouldn't be any difference whether you're on the student one or the
Well,
girl.
that's right, they only have bounces from none to one band.
It's just-
Yeah, so you got that market.
Well, oh, Courtney, I think, oh, good, okay, about first boards.
Just wanted to know if
She's gone.
I spot there.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I got a couple.
So it's been-
Hoping to have that Saturday.
Yeah, they should be fine. They should be fine for Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, look at that. It's a really good map. Just ask Matt.
I use that all the time.
You guys okay for Tuesday or you need anything?
I don't know what we're getting, to be honest.
Okay.
Nobody's told us what we're getting, how much what we're getting. And I don't know if we do know. All I know is we're getting, specifically we're getting, the trays of chicken Alfredo.
Oh, well, they said we made chicken Caesar salad.
It's a 40-year-old system, what do you want me to do?
I'm just saying,
Dismiss it?
I often mishear, misunderstand, forget. I get it, so I might be wrong, but I thought they said chicken Caesar salad. They have chicken Caesar salad.
I don't
So
care.
I may be wrong.
I think I'm gonna try to talk to the stylist and ask him we're gonna get food so that we can look at it and say, okay, we should be
Oh,
getting
really?
this.
Okay.
But that will be, we probably won't get it till Monday.
Yeah.
69 degrees in here.
I left with Audrey in her care, cut a cup of noodles.
But it's like-
How we doing there? I didn't.
It's bad.
Good, I think we're all out. Couple noodles. I need to reach out and do something. Yeah, we should.
Okay, I was gonna say, try to take a break.
I mean, there are some
Yeah.
places you can, but not.
Start providing.
Change my expectations.
Yeah. We're fighting with the blanket.
Yes, I need something.
Oh,
Our hotel.
Hey,
My birthday hotel, garden soon, and that's it. Those are the places. Yes, this is.
What's that?
It gives me, I consider it fairly good walk.
1 hour day. 1 hour day.
Okay.
I really
It's-
don't.
Okay, like you're right there. But that's typically how you do it walking. But just because Tom and I are older, I said, this is the very last day we're gonna do it. Oh, we're gonna be walking all around.
And I texted Courtney, I said, we wanted to come like ties.
Oh,
But
it
in
started.
general,
Yeah, in general, you're walking. You're walking good. Okay.
Okay.
No, that's awesome. Just wait. Yeah. Flip it over, just salad. Just wait. No, that's great, thank you. You got that there? Oh, look.
You seen me one last week, she loves me more than you.
It's tea with the cinnamon.
Yeah. I try to use. I tell them
How's that work?
So there you go.
First time Tuesday, we got the quick honors, and if you got one of that, that's a smart. So now they have to give her a little bit of.
Oh, should have got her. I need something to
My cousin's daughter that got on Facebook today and said, just left Cruise. And I'm like,
Well, good evening to everybody. Kathy, if you'll just stop talking, we'll get our class started.
Sorry. It wasn't just that.
Kathy, get away with it. Okay, let's pray again. Lord, we do thank you for this good day, for your goodness, your mercy, and your grace. Thank you, Lord, for the adventure we're about to set out on. We pray that tonight and next week, as we wrap up this portion of the class, that you would be with us, that your Spirit would teach us and guide us into all the truth, and help us to learn those things that will be a help to us as we put our feet on the ground in the Holy Land, as our eyes take in the sights, as we take in all the experiences, and try to understand with a greater sense of understanding and appreciation of the things that we've been reading about for years in your Word. And so, Lord, tonight we pray that you guide and direct our thoughts into your perfect will. In this name in. Okay, so let's go with a review sheet here, get an idea of where we're headed tonight. The last time we left off at the Dead Sea. Now we're going to start out down in the region of the Dead Sea. I got a few more pictures to show you about on the Dead Sea. And then we're going to move on and we're going to be talking about Qumran and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And most of you probably caught the news this past week of the discovery of a 12th Dead Sea Scrolls cave. And so a good friend of mine, Randy Price, who was a professor at Liberty University, was involved in the discovery of that cave, actually. And so I've got a few pictures to show tonight, actually from a National Geographic article. So National Geographic oftentimes has lousy content, but they have great photos. And so we'll make use of their photos and talk a little bit about what was discovered there in this 12th cave. I mentioned last week that new excavations are starting up with Masada. I have another picture of Masada I thought I'd show you, which has a real nice picture of the north end and the three stages of the palace there. And we can look at that a little bit. So we're going to talk about Qumran. We're also going to move just north of the Dead Sea and talk a little bit about Jericho tonight. And then from there, we're going to move up into the Judean mountains and talk about Lachish, a very important city in the Old Testament. We're not going to be visiting Lachish, but it's kind of a typical Judean mountains, ancient, large, significant fortress city. From there, we're going to move down into the Shephelah lowlands, and we will talk about the Valley of Elah. So Valley of Elah is where David fought Goliath. And there's some very interesting findings going on there over the last few years. The site we'll talk about, the discovery of the city of Sha'araim, a name which means two gates, a double-gated city, which makes this a very unique find from that particular period. And the city is mentioned in the biblical account of David and Goliath as the Philistines were fleeing from before the Israelites. So we'll take a look at that. Then from there, we're going to move south. We'll talk about Beersheba a little bit tonight. And then on the way back up the coast, we'll stop briefly at Ashkelon. And that'll be about it for tonight. But I also have a video I'd like to show you before we get to the PowerPoint. And this video is a documentary on the Cave of the Letters, which was discovered down near the region of En-Gedi. It's not a Dead Sea Scrolls cave, but it's very similar. And it actually it goes back earlier than this, but the primary findings there for the Bar Kokhba rebellion of 135. And some very interesting discoveries. Well done documentary, which appeared a number of years ago on Nova, and you can find it on YouTube quite easily. So we'll just look at that tonight. And but that's where we're going. Now, you have heard, I put out notices to people about Brian and Ann Nickerson. Brian has a brain tumor, so he is going to be undergoing surgery, brain surgery, and they just are not going to be able to come with us on our tour. So we've lost a couple of people, but they appreciate very much your prayers. When he saw his neurologist, the neurologist said that it was a fairly straightforward and relatively simple surgery, as brain surgery to go, but brain surgery is never simple, straightforward, and uncomplicated. But they anticipate like about a 3-hour surgery and then out, and he may only have to be on a slight bit of chemo, but they won't know for sure until afterwards. Appreciate your continued prayers, Brian and Ann Nickerson. So we had lost 2 people, and you never like to see loss of people. But then I was very surprised when about the same day that I discovered that Brian and Ann were going to be coming with us, I got a phone call voicemail, and the voice on the other end said, is it possible still to come on the tour? So I, of course, tried calling back and couldn't connect, phone goes. And eventually, finally that evening, made contact. There's a young fella, 22-year-old guy, a student at USC. His parents go to Grace Baptist Church here in Reading, and he'd like to come with us. So we're going to be welcoming John Nickel.
No,
Steve. Yes,
Stephen
thank you, Steve. Stephen Nickel, yeah. His dad is also named Steve Nickel, the doctor. You know him? Yeah, okay. So Steve and Kathy are the mom and dad, and the son is Steve also. So he's going to be joining us. So we're just happy about that. All right, so that's where we are. I want to show you a couple of things here that I think you'll find interesting. First of all, I've got this picture of Masada. And this is obviously an aerial photo. I don't know if this was taken from a drone or regular airplane or what. But that's quite nice because you're looking at the north end of Masada here. And you can see the
We get to see this, right?
Yeah, we'll see out there. We won't see this particular view. But right up here, these are the three levels of Herod's palace. Yeah, you can actually walk down to here.
We get to walk all the way down, or just?
Yeah. But actually, last time they were doing restoration work, and we weren't able to go down. But I've been down here many times, and I'm pretty sure it's open now. You can go all the way down here, depending on how much time we've got.
So is that a door or a wall on the very bottom?
Here?
Yeah. Is that a door, window?
I've never been over that part. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Okay, you'll be hanging
Have to
over
bring my
there
ropes
looking.
this time.
That is awesome. That is just
Let me
so
try to climb
awesome.
down there to see.
Any quicker?
You can see the defensive wall around the side of Masada here. Just off the picture here is the ramp
Right,
that they used
right.
to breach the wall. And they came through right about up in here. The Romans broke in. Where we come up by cable cars up on the north east side, right about where the pointer is, right there. And the excavations, the new excavations are just starting this week, actually, are up here in this northern end. So some years ago, as a result of aerial photography, they thought they saw evidence that indicated a large underground cavity up in there, and it's never been excavated. So that's the primary thing they really want to investigate. But there are also in all these buildings here that are Herodian, there are secondary structures and building that was put in there by the rebels who were holding out there in the first Jewish rebellion against Rome. So they will expect to find more as they investigate some of that stuff. So I don't know how much that'll interfere with our touring, but we'll get to see tons and tons of stuff up here. It's fascinating. But I love that picture. I thought that was really neat.
That is awesome.
Yeah, isn't that right?
And you say there is water up there at Masada, right?
Well, okay. No, not now. But there was
Okay.
2,000 years ago. Yeah.
Because they had catchments and stuff to catch the rainwater.
That's right. The water had to come from down below, of course. And they carried it up in big jars, and they filled up these big, huge systems. And yeah, but you can imagine being a Roman Friday down in the heat down here and seeing this water cascading over the edge, and what kind of tricks that would play on your mind.
Which we're in section here, I'm a little confused, which we're.
This is the north end.
That's not.
Dead Sea's out here, north end, south end, and if you continue up to the right, you go going west up into the Judean mountains, then over. Yeah. So this is taken from the north, actually the northwest, looking southeast.
Yeah, when you showed us a picture last week with the siege ramp and stuff, and you said, yeah, this is where Herod's I was not impressed by that. I thought it was a big deal.
Yeah, you
This is quite impressive.
this is really something you can really see
Yeah.
here.
My gosh.
Okay. All right. But thank you. That was the reaction I was hoping for. Made my day. Okay. And here are some. This is the National Geographic article on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let's see what we have in here. It's just the photos. These are good photos here, but there's a link. Yeah. So I just want to talk about some of these images. Back up just a little bit. That's it. So this is a this is actually a parchment. They didn't actually discover any scrolls with writing on them in this 12th cave. But one of the most remarkable discoveries is this parchment. This is leather, and it looks like it was prepared and ready to be written on. So this is a scroll without writing on it. It's been prepared, it's ready, the scribes were probably going to use it to record who knows what. But this was probably the most remarkable find in the cave, I think. But they found lots of other stuff. Most of it broken pottery, some arrowheads, and I wish I had a picture here, but they found some fabric from long ago. It's still in pretty good shape. You can see the weaving. It looks a little bit like burlap, rough fabric. I don't think this article has a picture of that. This is the area of the cave. See what it looks like. Here's the entrance right here. This one's fairly easy to get into. Now, when we see the Cave of Letters, you'll see a cave very, very difficult to get into. So in these Judean mountains, you've got cliffs, and sometimes you're in an area where you can kind of walk up to the entrance of the cave and just go in. Other times, you've got to basically either scale a vertical cliff to get there, or go along a narrow ledge, or come down with ropes. This one, not too bad. There's some of the broken pottery. Jeremiah chapter 32 talks about a sale of property in the days just during the Babylonian captivity. And Jeremiah is kinsman redeemer for his cousin. And his cousin is about to be carried off to Babylon and wants Jeremiah then to redeem the property that he has sold. And he's told to be careful to record. He goes down to the city gates and has the deed of purchase recorded. And there is reference to deeds, and they were stored in a clay jar. So this is the same kind of storage that we're talking about in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Used to store documents for long periods of time. To protect them fairly well from the weather, have fairly uniform temperature for long periods of time, and then especially out here in the desert where you don't have a lot of moisture anyway, you've got ideal conditions for preserving something. So these are some of the jars in the 12th cave. They're smashed. Robbers have come in and taken whatever scrolls had been there, probably to sell on the black market, which is too bad. There's been a lot of this in Israel, a lot of stealing of antiquities. Some of it by just thieves and robbers. Some of it unwittingly even by tourists. Come and find something and say, wow, this is really neat. I want this for my private collection. Go stick it in their pocket and go home. And I understand the temptation to do that. But that should never be done. Anything that's of archaeological value needs to be left in place to be studied by the archaeologists. And if there's any scholarly value to it, it needs to be studied in situ, in place, in context, so it can be written up, and any value that comes from it can be shared with the rest of the world. Once it's removed from the site, it might be something that you can impress your friends with, but it loses its value of scholarship. So these things need to be left in sight. But here, somebody has come and stolen the whatever these jars contain. Very possibly scrolls. And here are a couple of archaeologists. This is not Randy Price. These are the two guys from the Hebrew University associated with the Israeli Antiquities Authority that were there on the site as well. So this work is still ongoing, of course. Be ongoing for some time before they're done searching through the whole cave. Is being done properly under the auspices of the Israeli Antiquities Authority and in conjunction with Hebrew University in Jerusalem, as well as Liberty University here in Virginia, where my son works. Okay. So they should send him over there to get involved in his day. Okay. All right. Any questions or comments you've got? Okay, so, and as you know, we'll be participating in the Temple Mount Sifting project. So that'll be our little foray into a little bit of archaeology. That'll be great. Again, it's some 2,000-year-old dirt. See if we see anything of significance, and we just might. Many have found things of interest and significance. Many more have gone there, spent a couple hours and gotten their hands dirty, and that's about it. But we'll see, it'll be fun.
For me, I'm so excited. If all I do is move dirt,
Yeah.
then I know that I moved dirt for the next person. I'm stoked.
Well, that's an excellent point. Yeah. So it's participating in the whole project, and there's so much fascinating stuff that has come to light from this project. So thank you for mentioning that. Okay, so down in the region of En-Gedi, not too far from Qumran, is another cave that did not have Dead Sea Scrolls, but had some other scroll materials, as well as a bunch of other ancient artifacts. This is called the Cave of Letters. And so I want to show this documentary. And this is going to take an hour. Does anybody need to take a break to the bathroom or anything? Drink? Okay.
The great west of the Dead Sea, the land of the ancient prophets of the ancient, the land of David, King Solomon, the land of Jesus, and the early Christians. Here, high above the peak forbidden heavens, is a mysterious cave known as the
Can you hear that okay?
Could you turn up just a little bit?
That's all the way up.
Oh, wow, okay, never mind.
2,000 years ago.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, I think you're.
No, I've got it all the way up. Oh, maybe this way.
No,
That's all the way up too. That's up.
But what actually happened here? What desperation could have driven people to this nearly
That's all the way up.
inaccessible place?
And the speakers are all the way up.
What
It's only coming from up there.
found here?
Huh?
It's only coming from up
Oh,
there.
that's right. Those speakers don't matter. That's all.
Richard Freud, a
That's
professor
all
of
good.
English history, is mounting a new expedition to the cave.
I can, hold on a second.
Determined to unravel its deep secrets.
This is on here more than once.
So do we get to explore some of these caves?
We want to. Yeah, that would be fun. That would be. Good. That's amazing.
You can actually get Courtney to do, you could get Courtney to first on the.
No, that's all we're gonna get out of it. So just real careful.
West of the Dead Sea, the land of the ancient prophets of the Hebrew Bible, the land of King David, King Solomon, the land of David, and the early Christians. Here,
That was loud.
Yeah,
high above the
just try this, hold on a second.
Is a mysterious cave known as the Cave of Letters. Historians believe that 2,000 years ago, this desolate cave was used as a hideaway by Jewish refugees escaping the oppressive rule of the Roman Empire. But what actually happened here? What desperation could have driven people to this nearly inaccessible place? What do the ancient letters and objects found here tell us about their plight?
Are there any more heavy backpacks over here?
Richard Freund, a professor of Jewish history, is mounting a new expedition to the Cave of Letters, determined to unravel its deep secrets.
Head 'em up, move 'em out. So you have Roman source, you have Christian source, you have Jewish source, and they all say the same thing.
Freund's busload of archaeologists and historians is in for an arduous journey. A journey that will force them to confront long-held beliefs about biblical history.
Hey, go get a helmet. Make sure you pick out one that's works for you.
The trek begins on top of the cliff, then down a steep path to the level of the cave. It continues across a sheer cliff face on a series of narrow ledges, and finally, up to the cave itself. The path wanders precariously, 650 feet above the canyon floor. Lawrence Schiffman, a world-renowned scholar of the Dead Sea Scrolls, is determined to complete the climb, although he's admittedly a man more at home in a library than on a cliffside.
There's no question. It's not an easy thing for me to be here.
You're holding on for dear life, and then when you finally get to the ledges and you climb sideways along these very, very dangerous ledges where you have a 600-foot drop below you, you're just hoping, okay, let's get this over with.
One last challenge. A 50-foot climb up to the cave's entrance. Soon, the real quest can begin. Schiffman, Freund, and their colleagues will be able to explore a place that's intrigued historians and biblical scholars for decades. A place that may reveal secrets that have been held for thousands of years. Ancient refuge in the Holy Land. Right now, underwater. The vast desert of southern Israel is one of the harshest wastelands in the world. For thousands of years, this arid land has witnessed epic struggles, warrior heroes, religious visionaries, of persecution. The history of the region is told in the hundreds of caves scattered west of the Dead Sea. The famous Dead Sea Scrolls were found in caves like these. Sacred texts written in antiquity and hidden away for safekeeping. Israel, then called Judea, was part of the vast Roman Empire, but the Jewish nation lived uncomfortably with its pagan rulers. The emperor expected his subject nations to embrace the culture of Rome with its multiple human-like gods. But the Jews worshipped only at their temple, the center of their belief in one unseeable God. When the emperor defiled the temple, Jewish zealots rose up in bloody rebellion. Rome prevailed, killing hundreds of thousands of Jews. These timeless caves witnessed it all. Secret treasures deep within. Treasures that offer a window into those turbulent times of messianic fervor, oppression, and revolt. Just to stand on this soil is an emotional experience for Richard Freud. He's an American rabbi as well as an historian, and has been determined to explore the Cave of Letters for years.
This was the biggest opportunity, I think, that has been presented to an archaeological team over the past half century to go to probably the most productive, most fruitful cave that's ever been discovered on the Dead Sea, the Cave of Letters.
It was an Israeli expedition in 1960 that made the Cave of Letters famous. The expedition was led by one of the founding fathers of the young state of Israel, a military general, statesman, and archaeologist named Yigael Yadid. Along with dozens of archaeologists and hundreds of volunteers, Yadid launched an urgent search of the Dead Sea caves to rescue artifacts of historical importance before Israel's rich ancient heritage was looted by treasure hunters. In many of the caves, Yadid discovered little of interest, but there was still a large cave left to explore. High up in the cliffside, above a canyon called Nahal Heb. After a perilous climb, Yadid and his team found themselves in a vast, foreboding cavern. Soon they struck pay dirt, human skulls and bones, and troves of ancient artifacts. From the common objects of daily life to a dazzling cache of bronze ritual items. Evidence that people must have lived and died here, in this virtually inaccessible place, where temperatures often top 115 degrees, and the nearest source of water is far across the canyon. Why did people come here? Who were they? The mystery began to unravel with another amazing discovery. Hidden under a rock, in the deep recesses of the cave, was a find that took Yadid's breath away. A cache of ancient letters that gave the Cave of Letters its name. The crumbling documents were military orders, signed by a legendary leader of the Jews, known as Shimon Bar Kokhba, Simon, son of a star. From Shimon Bar Kokhba to Yehoshaphat, get a hold of the young men and come with them, and I shall deal with the Romans. Bar Kokhba led a heroic rebellion against the Romans about 1900 years ago. Over the centuries, he has been lionized in Jewish stories and poems as the last ruler of a free Jewish nation. Some even considered him the Messiah, born of a star to free his people from Roman oppression. but no historical evidence of his life had ever been found before. With the discovery of the letters, the skulls and household objects took on new meaning. Gunn believed they belonged to Jewish rebels who fled the Romans during the Bar Kokhba rebellion. But is this the only story the Cave of Letters tells? Richard Freund is not convinced.
The lingering mystery is, what else is in the cave? Because one thing is for sure, unlike Gunn in 1961, I'm absolutely convinced there are tremendous other finds to be found in this cave.
The Cave of Letters is massive, with 2 openings in the sheer cliff wall. Inside, there are 3 chambers, connected by narrow passageways. Overall, the cavern complex cuts more than 300 yards deep into the cliffside.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna concentrate on a few different areas where Gunn was unable to excavate and see, using our technology, if we can excavate there. And then we're gonna check all of the things that Gunn says that he fully excavated, just to see if he did his work quite as thorough as he thought he did.
In the early 1960s, Gunn's team scoured the cave perimeter, but was unable to search beneath the layer of rubble up to 15 feet deep that litters the cave floor. Rocks and boulders knocked loose from the roof by earthquakes over the centuries. The Freund's team has ways of seeing beneath the rubble. Ground-penetrating radar, GPR, can locate underground features using radio waves.
The 2 antennae are sending one sending down signal, and one is picking up the signal that's reflected off the layers beneath the surface. And what we're doing is getting an image of that subsurface stratigraphy or layers where the people might have lived that were in the cave.
The radar pinpoints the most likely spots to dig for artifacts.
That'd be something that is sticking out of the surface of the floor, such as pottery or something, and a rock that might be bearing something as well.
Identifying likely places to dig is one thing, but actually seeing under the ground requires another new tool. A device Richard Freund chanced upon back in the US.
It was during a physical for my own personal health that I was introduced to a new technology, an endoscope, a colonoscope, where they probe the insides of your body. And I asked the doctor at the time, is it possible to use this, I don't know, to search underneath rocks? And he looked at me and he said,
Freund invited Gordon Marshall, a physician who uses endoscopes, to come and operate it inside the cave.
We have to locate this stuff among all the debris of rocks and dirt and bed guano and things.
We're out.
A lot is riding on this device. A tiny camera lens at the end of a long, flexible optic fiber. Instead of the human body, he's probing history. And it's tedious, dirty work. The Cave of Letters is nearly as inhospitable now as it was 2,000 years ago.
This place stinks. It hasn't got any water. It's got salt all over the walls, which dries your skin out and causes, problems that way. It's a bad place to live. It's the only the place you'd like to live if you were running from the Romans or somebody else that was out to get you.
New evidence that people once lived in this wretched place is turning up daily.
It's a piece of papyrus, not marked. It's like a corner of a page. I think you can see the square bottom.
Yeah, we've got a rope sticking out of the ground here. I think it's attached to something.
Yeah.
I think it runs towards the hole.
Why don't you do that? I've got fabric over here like crazy.
We're sitting here in the AB passageway, which is the crawlway we go through every day as we enter the cave, go back to B and C halls where we're doing all the work. And what happens is as you walk through, your brushing the dirt down all the time, and someone found this comb halfway under this rock.
A simple wooden comb yields an important insight.
Here again, it's just evidence of people were living here. They didn't just hide out here. They were here for a longer time. Obviously, if you're going to keep your appearance up while you're in here, unlike us.
Oh, okay. It's a child's left sandal. And it's very rare to find in children's wear because, unfortunately, the children didn't always live to be older. So when you find something like this, you wonder what the life of this child was.
Why would anyone have brought children here? How long would they have been forced to live in such miserable conditions? Freud's team has now been working for 5 days. Tomorrow they'll be joined by an Israeli colleague who may help fill in the picture of those who once made this cave their refuge. Hannah Cotton is an authority on ancient languages. She spent years studying the papers and personal items found by Yadin. She jumped at the chance to explore the cave firsthand, despite the difficult climb.
Wonderful, huh? My goodness, I never thought I'd make it here. Come to understand how women and children can make it up here.
The life of one ancient woman in particular captivates Hannah. Her name was Babata, a widow and mother in her 30s when the rebellion began. She was related to Yehonatan, the military commander mentioned in Bar Kokhba's documents. It seems she fled with him to the Cave of Letters. Babata was an ordinary woman of her time, but we know her life in extraordinary detail, thanks to a cache of 35 personal papers she left hidden in this cave.
So, here is where they found the famous Babata archive. That Jewish woman who ended up alive here in this cave, and her purse was found here by Adin.
Babata's purse contained documents written in Aramaic and Greek, the official languages of the day. Wedding contracts, property deeds, bills of sale, and more. Because women had only limited rights under either Jewish or Roman law, Babata guarded her documents carefully.
The first time we hear about her is when she got married for the first time. The husband died and she was left with an orphan who was a minor. They appointed 2 guardians. And then she started a series of litigations with these guardians that she thought were both incompetent, and I think she also thinks that they were cheats.
Babata probably lived a comfortable life before the Bar Kokhba uprising. Her papers show that she owned a date orchard in the prosperous town of En-Gedi, on the western shore of the Dead Sea.
En-Gedi was a beautiful oasis in the desert. It had water, it had date palm trees. Later it had a beautiful synagogue. This was a place where people would have lived a upper middle class life. And for them to trek out into the desert and to come to this cave must have been a tremendous shock.
The Cave of Letters was so desolate and inaccessible. Babata and the others must have felt confident that they could stay here, undetected, for as long as necessary, then return home with their possessions once the Romans were defeated by Bar Kokhba's rebels. But what triggered the rebellion? Scholars point to one primary cause: a burning desire among some ardent Jews to reclaim Jerusalem from the Romans and rebuild their holy temple. For centuries, the temple had been the center of Jewish worship. It had been for Jews what Mecca is to Islam, or the Vatican to Catholics.
According to the book of Deuteronomy, there was to be built a special place of worship, which was the place that the Lord shall choose. And this was understood to be Jerusalem by the Jewish people.
About 20 years before the birth of Jesus, Herod, the king of the Jews appointed by Rome, began expanding the 500-year-old temple on Jerusalem's Temple Mount. He turned the temple into a monumental structure, using elements of Greek and Roman architecture, making it one of the wonders of the first century world. Here, Jewish priests worshiped God as they had for centuries, offering animal sacrifices on the temple's great altar amidst thick plumes of incense.
This is the temple that Jesus would have visited, the same temple that all those people who were making pilgrimage would have visited 3 times a year.
But Rome came to see the temple as a threat to its sovereignty, the center of growing Jewish nationalism. The emperor imposed oppressive restrictions on its use, and Roman soldiers breached the sanctuary, defiling it in Jewish eyes. Then, in the year 66, the Jews rebelled, vowing to kick out the pagans and free themselves from Roman rule. But after 4 years of bitter fighting, the mighty Roman army prevailed, leveling much of Jerusalem and destroying the temple.
There was enormous killing in the streets of Jerusalem. And then the wooden parts of the temple were burned. The walls were toppled and the building was totally wrecked. The Romans wanted to obliterate the entire thing because they understood its significance to the Jews really as a national center. That's what they were after. They weren't after Judaism. They were after this as a national political center. And they wanted to make sure that the Jews had learned a lesson of revolting. So it was totally destroyed.
All that remains of the temple complex in Jerusalem is a part of its massive outer wall, now known as the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall. Jews still consider it their holiest place. Judaism has adapted and survived for 2,000 years without the Great Temple. Local synagogues became the centers of worship, and prayer replaced the ancient practice of animal sacrifice. But for decades after its destruction, Jews feared their religion would die without this central place of worship. Then, in the year 132, a new emperor struck yet another blow at the heart of the Jewish religion.
Hadrian, the Roman emperor, had decreed that this temple mount would become Aelia Capitolina, essentially a temple of Jupiter, and that Jews would be forbidden to worship there, turning it really into a pagan cult site, which of course to the Jews was the greatest possible disgrace.
For Bar Kokhba, this was the last straw. He raised a rebel army of skilled Jewish fighters and caught the Roman legions by surprise. For nearly 3 years, the rebels held the upper hand and re-established Israel as an independent Jewish nation, with Bar Kokhba as its leader. Freud's team finds direct evidence of Bar Kokhba's early triumphs.
We found one Bar Kokhba coin in the A-B passage. It's only the 8th coin altogether found in this cave.
Bar Kokhba made his coins by overstamping the Roman emperor's coinage with temple imagery and the inscription for the freedom of Jerusalem. It was a bold act of defiance. Yadin had found similar coins and declared them proof of Bar Kokhba's heroic status. But new studies of Bar Kokhba's letters paint a different picture.
My first impression when I started to read the letters of Bar Kokhba was that he was had much less stature than the legend ever had, and that he was not a nice guy. He's constantly threatening everybody. I will punish you. I will exact punishment from you. He was barking out orders right and left.
To Yehonatan, you too will be punished. In comfort sit, eat, and drink from the property of the houses of Israel, and care nothing for your brothers. Kokhba wrote several threatening letters to Yehonatan, the leader from Engedi, whom Barbata and the others followed into the cave. Had Yehonatan fallen out of favor? Were the Jews in the cave actually hiding from Bar Kokhba as he became desperate and wrathful, fearing the tide of the war was turning against him?
Apparently, there were a lot of Jews who must have been getting arrested by Bar Kokhba and his army at this time. And I think we have to remember as we read these letters that not the entire Jewish people supported the Bar Kokhba revolt. There were many who thought that peace with the Romans would be a better course of action.
Barbata's documents, for instance, reveal no signs of tension between Jews and their Roman overlords.
Had I only read these documents, I would have said these are the last people to revolt against the Romans.
Jews and others were getting along quite well. They were not ghettoized people. They were people who did business. And there was some sudden shockwave that descended on the area.
The shockwave might have been Bar Kokhba's rebellion itself. Opinions differ as to how many people joined Bar Kokhba, or how popular he was within Judea. But most historians do agree on one thing. The Roman response was massive and brutal.
Hadrian called in 12 divisions from as far away as Britain in order to put down the rebellion for once and for all. They were going to use this small Jewish nation as an example to the entire empire. And that's what they did. Nearly 600,000 people were killed in the revolt. Over 900 villages were destroyed. The scope is so great that it's only eclipsed in our own times with the Holocaust.
Hadrian's wrath knew no bounds. Jews who survived the slaughter were forbidden to enter their holy city, Jerusalem. He even sought to erase the Jewish people from world memory, changing the name of their country from Judea to Syria Palestina. Roman legions scoured the countryside for Jewish rebels and their sympathizers, even into the most remote reaches of the desert, where Yehonatan, Barbata, and others had fled, seeking refuge up in the Cave of Letters. High above the cave, on the cliff top, Roman soldiers built small camps which can still be seen today. There they waited for the Jews to emerge. Clues to the refugees' fate may still be found. One of Freud's slender colleagues squeezes through a narrow passageway to explore a niche where Yadin had seen human bones. Is this what became of the Jewish refugees, trapped inside the cave by the Romans camped above? He brings back a videotape to show the others.
Here's one of them. Yeah. One of the pelvis.
The bones are small, all women and children. To think of them. Freud's team of experts may now be able to answer an important question that haunted Yadin. What was the exact cause of death for these refugees? Josias is a specialist in forensic analysis of ancient skeletons.
What's interesting here is that there seem to be a lot of kids here between the ages of, I would say, 7 to 15, which is unusual. The other thing is no pathology whatsoever, not even one broken bone. You usually see, you're looking at this much material, you're going to see some trauma, nothing.
The lack of physical trauma suggests that these people did not die violently. It seems they may have slowly starved to death after the Roman legions cut off their supplies. There's evidence that the refugees were able to hold out in the cave for some time. The team finds signs that they brought goats to eat and birds to lay eggs, and that they had made elaborate preparations for cooking.
Here's a piece that's kind of interesting. This is a piece of oven. They had huge circular ovens, and then we assume if people were in here for any time, they had to make their own bread, and bread was very important in their diet. They didn't just come in one day running away from the Romans and bring a few pieces of firewood. They were prepared. They came with stacks and stacks of wood, and they were getting ready.
But how did these desperate refugees, chased from their homes by Roman legions, find the time to gather so many supplies? How did they know where to go?
How did they know that this cave existed in 132 to bring all those people from Engedi out here? Unless they knew it from before. So it's clear to me, this was a well-known cave, a cave that had been used before and people talked about in closed circles. This was the place to go to in case of a refuge.
Richard Freund has a radical theory. Long before the Bar Kokhba rebellion, Jews would also have been in need of a refuge when the Romans crushed the first Jewish revolt and burned the temple to the ground in the year 70. Freund believes that the Cave of Letters was occupied during that first revolt, decades before Bar Kokhba, a possibility that Yadin's team never really considered.
When they discovered this cave, they thought that this was going to be one story, the story of the Bar Kokhba rebellion. And after examining the material, I started to question whether maybe there wasn't another story. The story about not the 2nd century, but the 1st century. Not the story of the Bar Kokhba rebellion, but the story of the destruction of the temple and those refugees who came out of Jerusalem.
Freund is convinced that there must be a lower layer in the cave, dating back to the temple era. He turns to another new technology that might confirm this: electrical resistivity tomography. This device can identify underground features by measuring how well the ground conducts electricity. The solid bedrock on the bottom is the best conductor and shows up as blue. Above are lines of green, yellow, and orange, indicating layers of hard-packed clay that at one time made up the cave floor. These are weaker conductors. Above, displayed in pink, is rubble, the poorest conductor. When these images are overlaid with ground-penetrating radar data, a more detailed picture emerges. The rubble appears to be layered, suggesting it was built up over time when earthquakes rocked the area. Freund believes the layers represent different periods of occupation. He's convinced that some of Yadin's most spectacular finds came from the lowest layers. In particular, a set of 19 bronze ottomans, shovels for carrying the incense needed for religious ceremonies, wine decanters, and a patera, a ritual libation dish decorated with figures from Roman mythology.
Wow, it's been more than 40 years since I've been here. It's something.
One of the original members of Yadin's 1960 expedition, Pinchas Porat, remembers vividly how the bronzes were found.
Here. The metal detector gave the signal that there was a large amount of metal. You have a very strong signal.
When Porat and his colleagues began to dig, they made an unpleasant discovery.
It was a toilet. This was where the toilets were. And what we were finding was the dried up remnants of people going to the toilet. We didn't know why a metal detector was going off to the toilet. And we dug and dug and dug and dug. So we were just starting to give up. And suddenly we found a piece of rope.
We followed the rope down, we kept uncovering the area, and the rope was attached to the handles of a closed basket. And of course, it was full of the bronze vessels that are an exhibition in Jerusalem today.
All the other finds in the Cave of Letters were of Jewish origin. But Yadim believed these bronzes were pagan ritual items, Roman, that had been stolen by the Bar Kokhba rebels. But Richard Freund disagrees.
The most beautiful bronze artifacts ever found together in any location. The fact that it was buried inside of a cave in the Judean desert leads me to believe that there's something more going on here. Why were they buried? I mean, here was a person, Bar Kokhba, who needed bronze for weapons, for coinage, for everyday life. And here, they were pagan objects. Would he have buried them? He would have melted them down.
As the dig winds down, the team makes one last search with a metal detector. Another coin, but this one is different.
This is a first revolt coin that was minted in 68, before the destruction of Jerusalem. This is the first clear piece of evidence that we have of some type of first century appearance here in the cave. It's the most important find that we found so far. This is the smoking gun.
This coin convinces Freund that the cave was indeed occupied in the year 70, following the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, and that the 19 bronzes are not Roman at all. He believes they are Jewish ritual objects. Rescued from the temple just before it was destroyed and hidden away in the Cave of Letters.
No artifacts from that temple in Jerusalem have ever been found. And to be able to rediscover those artifacts that were used in that service would be a remarkable event.
It's long been believed that everything from the Great Temple was destroyed or carted away by Roman soldiers, as depicted on the Arch of Titus, the triumphant structure erected by the emperor to celebrate Rome's victory over the Jews. But some scholars believe that Jewish priests were able to hide precious ritual objects before the catastrophe. They point to a cryptic 1st century text known as the Copper Scroll to support their theory. It's the most unusual and puzzling of all the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Out of the over 800 manuscripts that were discovered on the Dead Sea, in the 11 caves, only one is unique. All the rest are on papyrus and parchment. This one scroll is on copper, and it's a list. It's not a theological text, it's not the Bible. It's a list of the 64 locations where the artifacts from the temple in Jerusalem were buried. And it's probably the most unique, the most important, and the least understood.
If we want to imagine how the Copper Scroll came into being, the thing that we should think of is probably a high-ranking priest sitting there thinking, how can I prevent this treasure from falling into the hands of the Romans? And then devising the plan to find various kinds of hiding places in the outskirts of Jerusalem and the Judean desert, and squirreling away these treasures. What he would have done after he had identified the hiding places is personally to put on a piece of parchment the list of 64 hiding places and what is hidden there. Then he would have hired a metal worker and asked him to copy it on a sheet of copper.
This scroll of copper was hidden in a cave like this near the Dead Sea village of Qumran, where it lay undiscovered for nearly 2,000 years. The copper was coated with clay and could not be unrolled. Only by carefully slicing the scroll into thin strips could the ancient writing be deciphered. Item number 25 particularly intrigued Richard Ford. It read, "In the cave of the column of two openings, facing east at the northern opening, is buried at 3 cubits, a ritual limestone vessel. In it is one scroll. Underneath is treasure."
The Cave of Letters may be one of those 64 locations mentioned in the Copper Scroll. It says, in a double entrance cave, which is called the Cave of the Column, there's a double entrance cave on the outside that looks like it's a column. On the northern entrance, this is the northern entrance, 3 cubits down, you're going to find these metal objects. In addition, it says that above them, you're going to find a limestone vessel, and next to that, you're going to find a scroll.
Yadin's expedition had found the bronze artifacts near this northern entrance. Now, Freud wants to measure how deep the bronzes were buried. Is it the same